Hey guys. The cold morning fog rolled over the jagged towers of Carith Keep, blanketing the stone walls like a funeral shroud. Young Lord Varren ascended the throne, the weight of crown pressing down not just on his head, but on the very marrow of his ambition. He flexed his fingers over the cold steel armrest, imagining the screams that would echo through the dungeons below. The nobles bowed, their faces tight with fear. Varren's first decree, loyalty or the lash. No one dared to question his word. The hall smelled of burnt torches and wet stone, the faint metallic temps of blood lingering from the previous lord's execution the night before. He walked down the narrow corridors, each echo of his boots reminding the servants that power now lived in these halls like a predator. The torturers, grim men with iron hooks and leather straps, awaited his inspection. Their eyes flicked nervously toward him, knowing a nod from the young lord could seal the prisoner's fate. Varren's curiosity was brutal. He wanted to understand. Pain the way one tastes wine slow, deliberate, with full attention. In the dungeons, he watched men tremble as their secrets were ripped from them, their cries bouncing off the damp stone walls. Every face etched into his memory, every scream catalogued like a ledger of control. The court whispered about the new Lord, how a boy, barely 20, ruled with a mind sharper than any blade. They didn't yet understand that cruelty was not just his tool, it was his signature, his language of command. And as the sun set behind the keep, casting long shadows across the throne room, Varren's grin was wide, cold, and unyielding. This kingdom would bend, break, or burn under him, and all would remember the sound of the crown clinking against chains. The torches flickered, casting long, jittering shadows across the stone walls of Carith Keep. Lord Varren's court had become more than a seat of power. It was a cathedral of fear. Every whisper could be deadly. Every glance a potential betrayal. Varren strode through the grand hall, cloak sweeping the floor, his eyes sharp, scanning faces. Nobles shifted uneasily, knowing that the slightest misstep could earn them a trip to the dungeons. A prisoner's cry echoed faintly from below, and a cold smile flickered across the young lord's lips. Pain was not a tool, it was the language he spoke fluently. The court's torturers displayed their devices proudly. Racks, iron chairs, spiked cages. Varren ran his fingers along the glinting metal, imagining the screams that would follow. A knight who had once sworn loyalty to the crown now trembled at the mere sight of the instruments. The queen, silent and composed, observed from a distant balcony, her eyes hiding a storm of fear and resentment. Some whispered that even she feared what her husband was capable of. Others plotted, secretly sending messages to allies beyond the keep's walls. Every letter intercepted was burned, every messenger flogged. In the chamber of chains, Varren inspected his prisoners personally. Each man and woman had secrets, debts, sins that the young lord intended to expose in excruciating detail. Chains creaked, whispers were silenced, and bodies twisted under the precision of medieval cruelty. Varren watched, notebook in hand, cataloguing every reaction with the cold precision of a scholar. The sun dipped lower, casting a bloody hue over the keep. Outside, the common folk murmured of disappearances, of screams that carried on the wind. Within, Lord Varren's court operated with ruthless order, fear, obedience, and the unending hum of agony. And as night settled, the crown atop his head gleamed faintly, reflecting the faint candlelight, reminding all that the kingdom's heart now beat to the rhythm of pain. The kingdom was bleeding. Rumors of rebellion seeped through the cobblestone streets like poison. and the once loyal nobles were already sharpening their knives in the shadows. Lord Varren had built his reign on fear, but fear had its limits. Discontent festered, and whispers of conspiracy reached even the coldest corners of the keep. A convoy of traitors was dragged into the grand hall, bound and bleeding. Varren's eyes glinted like sharpened steel. Each man had betrayed him in some way, and each would pay with screams that echoed through the stone corridors. The executioner, a hulking figure with an iron mask, raised his axe. Silence fell, thick and suffocating, broken only by the first splatter of blood outside the castle walls. Peasants rioted, fueled by famine and desperation. Smoke spiraled into the grey sky, and the sound of torches clashing with pitchforks carried across the valleys. Soldiers loyal to Varren moved swiftly, cutting down dissenters with brutal precision. Every swing of the sword was a statement. Betrayal would not be tolerated, and every corner of the kingdom would learn the price of defiance. Even allies turned wary. The queen, still seated in her balcony, watched as her husband orchestrated the carnage, the gleam of blood reflected in her eyes. A counselor who once whispered advice in Varren's ear was found dangling by chains in the courtyard, his screams swallowed by the night. Fear had a taste metallic, and sharpened the kingdom drank it deeply. By nightfall, the keep stood tall but scarred. The streets ran red, the walls were smeared with signs of treachery, and the echoes of pain had imprinted themselves in every stone. Lord Varren, seated atop the crown of echoes, traced the blood with a fingertip, recording each act in meticulous detail. His reign of terror was far from over, but every rebellion crushed, every betrayal punished, only fed the dark legend of the crown. The once mighty keep was now a skeleton of its former glory. Smoke curled from the shattered rooftops, and the echoes of agony still lingered in the crumbling halls. Lord Varren, older now, sat upon the crown of echoes, his hands stained and veins heavy with memories of cruelty. His empire had survived, but at what cost? The streets were empty, save for the wind carrying faint whispers of the dead. Allies had vanished, either murdered or fleeing into distant lands. Nobles no longer bowed, they cowered, scattered across ruins and forests. The kingdom was alive with a hollow heartbeat, each echo a reminder of suffering that could not be erased. Varren's rule had created a legend, dark and unyielding, a crown that carried the screams of generations. He walked through the great hall, now adorned with the remnants of his terror. Broken chains hung from the ceiling, rusted racks lay abandoned, and the smell of iron and smoke clung to every stone. Portraits of past rulers stared down at him, silent witnesses to the atrocities that had unfolded under his reign. Even the walls seemed to shiver at his footsteps. As night fell, the moonlight caught the crown of echoes, its jewels dull, yet eerily reflecting the suffering trapped within. Varren traced the engravings with a trembling finger, each mark a history of betrayal, blood, and fear. A chill swept through the keep, carrying the voices of those he had wronged. The young lord who once delighted in screams was now alone, haunted by the echoes of his own creation. When dawn broke, the keep remained, a monument to pain, yet empty of life. The legacy of agony was etched into stone, chains, and blood-stained floors. Travelers whispered tales of the crown, warning all who dared to seek power that the crown of echoes did not forgive. And in the silence of the ruins, the echoes of history, painful, unrelenting, eternal, continued to whisper, a haunting reminder that tyranny leaves a scar no time can heal.